And hello, Hearts of Oak. Thank you so much for joining us once again for another news review. And it's wonderful to have James Harvey back with us again. James, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you for having me on, Peter.
Always good having you on, and people can follow you at James Harvey 2503. That's on X, on Twitter, and obviously founder of Students Against Tyranny. And you'll see him all over the place with Urban Scoop and also V Popular Media. All the links are there in the description, and the links are up in the header of his X profile. Now, there's the first one I think was one, and this is why I love having different guests on because there are things that we all miss. And I had missed this. Hope Not Hit have their state of hit out. And there is your picture, and you were objecting. You wanted a better picture. So what are your thoughts on? Obviously, it's always good to talk to people who are in this great document. Yeah, what are your thoughts, and have you sent them a different picture?
So, I mean, with the state of hate report, I was telling you a minute ago, Peter, that I've always used this report as like a catalogue to find out people that I'm not following, so then I can go and follow them. That's how I use it, and it's great. It's a great tool for networking, really, because anyone who's in here, or most of the people in here, aren't actually far right and they aren't actually fascists. Yeah. Now, I'm absolutely livid with that picture. So that picture that they took of me there, right, is from a YouTube thumbnail that I did 2 years ago at Manchester University from one of my rallies, right? I was speaking at a rally that I organised outside Manchester University about John Christian. I think we did a podcast about it before, didn't we? We talked about
Hmm.
it. And on the thumbnail, it included that picture of me, right? So obviously they took like a little screenshot, a low resolution, and then cut it out in Photoshop and added me on a white background. Right, you could go for my Instagram and get better pictures. I am livid. You look at Danny Roscoe's picture. I know they've recycled the same picture for years now, but it's it's him on a stage doing like a little power pose, and then there's me. It's just crap. so I'm fuming, and I have collected a few good pictures of me that I am going to be emailing to Hope Not Hate with a very angry letter later this evening. Um, so yeah, it was a good state of hate report. This one. The problem is that they haven't really added anything original. What they do is they take things and they copy and paste it. Biggest example of that is the section they did on the United Kingdom rallies. It was literally a copy and pasted article that they wrote about it when it first started happening. Yeah. With my section, a lot of it is copy and pasted, and then they add a few extra bits in, like the fact that I've allegedly been quiet on social media over the past year. Now, there's a very important reason I've been quiet. Since I've been kicked out of university,
Yeah.
I've been when I was kicked out, I was on living on like £400 a month,
Yeah.
and so I was trying to earn money, and that was kind of my priority, is getting myself in a situation where I'm financially stable. Yeah, so I was quite quiet on social media. The reason we're still quiet on social media in terms of students against tyranny is because we're taking it offline and we're organising, and we're getting organised. We're getting the young people organised, and hopefully back out on the streets in force in a couple of months to the near future. So that's why we're being so quiet and doing things offline, because the problem is we're doing everything online is that you're always showing your card, yeah?
Yeah.
You're showing them your plans, you're showing them how you're working, and you're giving them a lot of ammunition. So we've been taking it offline, we've been doing a lot of activism, door-to-door leafleting outside of universities, all that kind of stuff, without publicising it all the time, because you don't feel the need to necessarily. But we'll become more vocal in due course.
No, it's a great document. I remember one just in passing, Lord Pearson got it, and he was about him and Baroness Cox about doing stuff, and he goes, "Oh, well, we'll need to write and complain," and he read it, and then his response was, "Well, that's quite good. They've done quite well. Should have sent them a thank you letter." That was his response, which is what you have to do, kind of mock and play along with these people, and you turn their hit into just ridicule and mocking back. So, yeah, yeah.
No, absolutely. It's a when you're in the state of hate report. So the first year I was in it was 2023, and then 2024 I wasn't in it. I was absolutely devastated. 2025, I'm back in it again, and it's a to me it says that you're over the target.
Yeah.
Yeah, because these organizations. So the way Hope Not Hate works is they are funded by the government. You know, they work with United Nations and all these global unelected organizations that somehow have a massive say in our politics, and they organize what is it? They put out so-called news, right? They target people who are very anti-establishment. Yeah, like I mean, standards racism, right? Do you remember the 15-minute cities? So
Yep.
when 15-minute cities were happening, we were out on the streets protesting. I remember organising a protest in Swansea and I organised a protest in Cardiff, and both times I had standards racism come out. Yeah, and then Oxford as well. You know,
Mhm.
Oxford, they did the protest against low traffic neighbourhoods. They said me and Tommy Robinson organised that. That's a load of crap. We didn't. So they what was it? They came out that Antifa and standards racism then came out and forced and protest against that. Now these groups, these protest groups like standards racism, Antifa, and I'm going to consider Hope Not Hate one of them.
Yeah.
They're funded by the government to act as their brown shirts, right? So they'll come out and they'll protest against people who are protesting against the government under the guise of, oh yeah, we're anti-racist, we're anti-fascist. When in reality, all they are is they are the brown shirts of the Labour government.
No, 100%. And for US viewers, for the War and Posse, Hope Not Hate basically is maybe like Media Matters for America, something similar, and awful, far left, hard left, that's actually funded by the government to put out, as James said. But there's this little clip. I want to start on this and then we'll delve more into the UK news. But this is a clip of Trump addressing Congress. And I sat and watched the whole thing. But this is just one of the 20-second clips from it.
The media and our friends in the Democrat Party kept saying we needed new legislation. We must have legislation to secure the border. But it turned out that all we really needed was a new president.
And you see that divide, absolute divide, where the Republican side cheering and the Democrat not responding to anything. And I think Trump said even if he brought out a cure for cancer, they still would be angry at him. But I don't know if you watch clips of it, but it was a long speech, as always Trump does, entertaining, energetic, and wow, we're what, 5-6 weeks in, and it seems as though a whole presidential term has passed. The amount of things he's actually legislated and done.
Well, they say a day in a politics is a long time, and it is. You know, a day in a politics is an extremely long time, and things change massively and drastically. And I think Trump, through the supporting migrants en masse, sorting out the H-1B visa program, and everything else that he's doing is just fantastic. Obviously, I do have a few criticisms in terms of his involvement with the Tates,
Yeah.
and you know, a few other things. But other than that, he's doing quite a good job. You know, the only criticism I really have is, as I said, is his involvement with Andrew Tate, and I think that's where the Florida governor, is it Ron DeSantis,
Yep.
actually is doing some good work. You know, I don't agree with DeSantis and everything, but I think what he's doing there, you know, he's actually pressing charges against human traffickers. Then I think that's fantastic. But I was a bit confused when they flew over to America, whether that's part of Trump's plan. And he needed them to, you know, you keep your you keep your friends close and your enemies closer. I don't know, but we'll find out in due course.
Well, let's bring up actually. Well, I had it on the list to me touch later, but actually bring it up now. And this is fascinating because 100% with you, James. I am utterly confused at so-called conservatives actually praising Andrew Tate and what he's done. He's a pimp, and that's how he's made his money. And they talk about protecting women, but this is a fascinating turn of events. I expect that whenever they went to the US, they thought this is our life is now sorted. And then the Florida Attorney General starts search warrants against them and criminal investigations. And yeah, maybe this was Trump's plan all along. I no longer know what level of where 4D or 5D chess sometimes you're playing, but this was good news after. I agree with you. The disappointing news, they seem to have been welcomed to the US with open arms.
Mm. The thing is with the Tates, right? So you know how they came out and they said they were Muslims.
Yeah.
Yeah, they came out and said they were Muslims. Well, if anyone actually watched any of Andrew Tate's videos from Florida, you can see him there drinking coffee and eating food.
Yeah.
Right. And so he's not actually celebrating Ramadan. Andrew Tate never was a Muslim. He only said he was a Muslim to get the support of the Muslim population and the Muslim community. Because you never see a homeless Muslim, right? So the community and the backing that the Muslim community gives is massive and enormous, and he knows that. And it's a very protected class, isn't it? A very protected characteristic is to follow the Islamic faith. I find that it's exactly the same with MAGA. He's not actually. He might have these right-wing views, these right-wing views of traditional masculinity, which, by the way, I don't actually think he presents masculinity. Because if you think, if your idea of masculinity is sleeping with as many women as possible and not building a family, then you've got it completely wrong, right? I don't think they're good role models of masculinity at all. Yeah, especially when some of the girls he abused on video are 15 years old.
Yeah.
15 years old, and that was confirmed, right? He knew their ages, but I think the reason he came out and said he started this whole traditional masculinity, I'm MAGA persona was purely that. It's a persona, and it's a persona to get the backing of all of for example, look at Tommy Robinson, right? Tommy Robinson's currently in prison. He's a political prisoner over releasing, the banned silenced film documentary. Yeah, so it happens a lot in the right-wing movement where people are being arrested for free speech, posting memes. Look what they tried to do to Count Dankula, who got his pugs to do the Nazi salute, right? He saw that a lot of right-wingers were getting blatantly attacked by what he considers to be the Matrix, right? And then he thought, well, if I start presenting my right-wing MAGA views, and then they start coming after me for human trafficking, well, that just means that it's the Matrix attacking me, and I can claim that, right? What was the first thing he said when the Attorney General started pressing charges against him and executing these search warrants? It was literally, the Matrix is attacking me. Yeah. It's a very carefully crafted persona to protect him from criticism, to protect him from these allegations, which are factually based, right? Now, I never used to think this. Yeah, I used to be a very, an Andrew Tate ride or dyer. Yeah, but then I remember getting a phone call of one of my friends, and he was like, "James, just look at the evidence, right?" And he walked me through the evidence. So for human trafficking in Romania, you've got 3 components: it's recruitment, deception, and exploitation. They have evidence. So they have evidence of text messages he sent to these girls where he would he would try and say, oh yeah, I love you, and come over here, I'll marry you, that kind of stuff, right? He then flew the girls out where he would then sit them down with someone he considered to be his top bitch. This is all stuff he admitted. He's admitted this, yeah? He would sit them down with his top bitch, who would then start encouraging him, who would start talking about the positives of sex work, camera sex work, right? And and slowly then he would start spending less time with them, and he would sorry, my brain is going all over the place. So slowly then he starts spending less time with them and say, well, if you want to spend more time with me, maybe you should come work for me, right? And and he didn't marry them when they arrived, which proves a deception. And he set up the OnlyFans for them, only giving them like 40% of the money. He'd taken like 60%. He is a classic case of human trafficker who then, now many of his victims have been revealed to be under the age of 16, right? And he's also talked many times about wanting to marry and sleep with 16-year-olds, yeah? This guy is a disgusting pervert. He does not represent MAGA values. He will never represent MAGA values, because conservatism is very anti this. Yeah, we are very anti the idea of pornography, right? And it's very, I know he's against pornography now, but it's very easy to be against pornography once you made your first couple million from it.
Yeah.
And Tristan Tate is still sitting on podcasts now saying if you're struggling for money, why don't you pimp out your girlfriend and get her to do live cam shows? Like, what? This is not masculinity. Yeah. Look at Bonnie Blue, right? The girl who slept with over 1,000 men in a 24-hour time frame, right? When she started, she was in a relationship with this guy, right? And it actually started as her doing live cam shows, and then transitioned into her becoming a fully fledged OnlyFans prostitute, pretty much, right? So what the way I see it is essentially a form of cucking, which is the lowest form of masculinity there is. Yeah. So I know I don't understand it. I don't understand why there are so many people who have fallen for this trap, right? It confuses me, and then it angers me to see the amount of people in the MAGA movement who support him. And I was talking to Sammy Woodhouse about this, right?
Yep.
And Sammy's a victim of the Rotherham grooming gang, right?
Mhm.
She knows about this behavior firsthand, and she said all the behavior exhibited by the Tates is kind of very similar to the behavior exhibited by the groomers in Rotherham.
Yeah.
But people
I
still
agree.
support it, and I don't get it.
Well, let's hope and pray that those charges are successful, and that they're actually locked up for a long time. I think that's what we would all want. You mentioned Tommy and his situation, and here is his latest post update on Tommy, that he has now been in solitary confinement for 128 plus days. The government refused to call it that; they call it segregation. At HMP Woodhill, 22 hours a day, locked in a cell, facing an 18-month sentence for the crime of showing a film. And legally, my understanding, Lord Pearson put in a question on this, legally, an individual can only be held for maximum 42 days. How that is actually allowed in the UK, but it is. And then after those 42 days, it can be extended indefinitely. So there's no limits on how far this is extended. So, I mean, what are you're obviously with Urban Scoop, with all connections with Tommy and like-minded people who are speaking common sense. Yeah, it is pure evil, and it shows he really is an enemy of the state.
Yeah, well, the thing is, I don't want to argue from a position of that Tommy should be taken off solitary confinement, mainly for his safety. If he does get taken off solitary confinement and put in a general population wing, he will be killed, and he will be murdered in a very brutal way. We know exactly how these Islamists work, right? But like the thing is, he shouldn't be in prison for such a long period of time anyway. What is essentially 18 months, but he's only going to serve 9 for releasing a documentary that kind of exposed how the judiciary completely lied, right?
Yeah.
It blows everything out of the water. I know we haven't heard Jamel's side of the story necessarily because we haven't interviewed him. I'm sure Tommy has probably tried because he does believe in the right to reply, his journalistic integrity. But this film, it showed the NDAs that the school teacher, the head teachers, were forced to sign, so they wouldn't be allowed to talk out about this topic. And all of this was caught on a secret camera that he had in his tie, right?
Yeah.
So they didn't know the camera was recording. They'd have no reason to lie to him. So I'm really confused as to why. Well, I'm not confused. We know why they did it. They did it to paint a certain narrative that white people are inherently evil, and that these poor refugees coming in are the victim of brutality from far right racist thugs. Yeah, so we know why they did it. Yeah. Now Tommy doesn't deserve to be in prison for 9 months for this. No. I'd say. He shouldn't be.
I mean, a fine and a slap on the wrist, that's generally how contempt works.
Yeah.
And yet he's got 18 months solitary confinement, as the worst of the worst type of prisoners, along with those who are murderers, who are rapists. And then you got the terrorism charge on top of it. And it's just everything they can pile upon him, they will.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There was a point I wanted to add to that. So I completely forgot. My brain has gone blank.
It will drop in again, but certainly I think it's vital that we and what you do and many of my guests actually highlight Tommy's situation. I had Ezra on the other day, and Ezra's done great work with Tommy, and it's vital that independent journalists actually let the public know what's happening.
Yeah, and this is the second time as well he's gone to prison for contempt.
Yeah.
And as you rightly said there, contempt usually results in a fine or a slap on the wrist, right? But to be sent to prison twice for a long period of time for it on solitary confinement is absolutely abhorrent. Now, I haven't gone to see Tommy personally. I was meant to, but it kind of got moved back. There was some stuff going on. Now, from my understanding, he is, from things I've heard from people who've gone to see him, is that he is struggling to speak, and it takes him a while to get into the flow of a conversation.
Yeah.
He is losing weight drastically, and as you know, Tommy went on a massive health stint before going to prison.
Yeah.
So he's not looking good. And if you remember the last time he came out of prison, from solitary confinement, where he lived on a tin of tuna a day,
Yeah.
from that he purchased from the commissary, he wasn't looking well, man. He came out, his beard was all scraggly. He lost a tremendous amount of weight, and he did I think he did an interview with Tucker Carlson. And in the interview, you could see, he was struggling to speak, and he just looked like a beaten man.
Yeah.
He looked like a man with PTSD, with massive amounts of trauma. And, Tommy's already been diagnosed with PTSD as well, hasn't he?
Yep.
So this is adding on top of that. Man, you got to feel sorry for the man. But what really gets me is all these people who are attacking him now that he's inside prison, right? You've got the typical James Goddard, patriotic alternative, all coming out of the woodwork to attack this man. And, with James Goddard, I personally think it's out of place from jealousy. When he started, he was actually part of the Tommy team, and he desperately wanted to be this man. And I don't know why he'd want to be Tommy, the amount of shit he's gone through, but he desperately wanted to be Tommy. So have you seen this thing with Mark Heath that's going on at the moment?
Yeah, I have. Yes.
Yeah, so let's respond to some of the allegations that were made there, yeah? I feel like this is a good place to do it.
Yeah.
He claims that, so on the last demo, Tommy, after Tommy wasn't there, was he? But what it was said was we want to raise money for Tommy's children, his wife, and the family of Peter Lynch, right? Now, unfortunately, Peter Lynch's family, they refused the money, right? Now, we can't force them to take the money. If they refuse it, they refuse it, right? Now, what Mark Heath is saying is that £42,000 was raised in buckets for Peter Lynch's family. That's not true. It was about 3 or 4 grand. It was a very low amount. Now, people are asking where that money went, and rightly so. I've always encouraged follow the money journalism, right? If people want to know where their money's going, that's fair enough. The money has gone to Gemma and his kids. That's it. Yeah. Like they said, the money would be split between Tommy's ex-wife, and the kids, and Peter Lynch's family, because Peter Lynch's family didn't want it. It's gone to his wife and the kids. So that's what's happened to the money. Now you've got all of these bad actors who are coming out and saying that the next demo, it's not going to cost £100,000, and if this is just grifting off the movement. Have you seen the size of these demos? They pay a premium on everything they purchase. They've used the same guy since the EDL days, yeah. And this guy, he's a businessman at the end of the day. He's going to charge more money because it's Tommy. Yeah, he's not doing this necessarily because he agrees with Tommy. He's doing it because to make money. Yeah, so he charges a premium on top of that. It's going to cost £100,000. The planning that's gone into this next demo, where you've got Stephen Bannon speaking, you've got amazing American MAGA, activists who are coming and speaking at this demo. I'm really excited to go to this one and film it. It's going to cost a lot of money, and the fact of the matter is, things do cost money. They do cost a lot of it.
True.
When I started Students Against Tyranny, right, we raised £10,000 at the beginning. £10,000. That was gone within 2 months, and the reason it was gone is because I purchased all this lighting, camera equipment, computers. I paid for travel, hotels, leaflets, events all over the country. Things like this, they do cost a lot of money, and that money goes quicker than it comes in. So that's the kind of brunt force of it. But I thought I'd touch on that while we're here as well.
No, I agree 100%. And people, what I think the public can do, the viewers and listeners, keep spreading the message about Tommy and pray for him. Those are the 2 things you can actively do. Here's another one, and I sometimes worry, and you've put up a lot about concern of mass immigration, public transport. Here was a clip, and I'll bring up the Daily Mail article of what happened.
I don't like to sleep, bro. I don't like to sleep, man. I want to fight in my winter, bro. Look at me, I'm strong. Look at me, look. Oh!
You weren't expecting that, viewers. And here is the Daily Mail article that puts it in in context. Computer who stepped into headbutt man, threatened to stab people on a packed train, is revealed as an off-duty policeman. And that's what we need. I haven't seen the police doing that much. Maybe they all need to be off duty instead of on duty. I don't know, but this is kind of what maybe would have happened a long time ago. The police intervening off duty, and now it's very much, I'm not on duty. It's not my responsibility. So it kind of puts a little bit of hope into humanity when you see this.
Absolutely. I mean, you hit the nail on the head with regards to policing. I think a big issue with it is the physicality standards for police have dropped.
Yeah.
So when like what was it? I think it was Anne Middleton who said you sweat hard in training, so you bleed less in war.
Yeah.
Right. And it kind of plays on with this a little bit, because when they started allowing police women into the police force, they actually lowered the physicality standards for them because they couldn't meet the requirements. Yeah, that is incredibly dangerous and incredibly wrong of society to do. Incredibly wrong. We are now putting women who haven't passed the physical standards to be an actual police officer in the line of danger. There was another video I put out recently of this. It was like a 6-foot black man was getting visibly aggressive, and the only person who was dealing with him was one like male police officer who was about 5'9", and 2 female police officers. The female police officers, they can't do anything, right? They literally cannot do anything, right? They'll be getting thrown around. And if you've seen it, usually in London demos, right, is usually the 6-foot police, the male police officers they're spending the entire time protecting the female officers, right? Because they will get ragged around by a 6-foot, black man for definite, right? And he looked quite buff as well. And this is the problem, is we're putting women directly in the line of danger. It used to be police officers used to be people with 6 packs, big muscly men who were usually about 6 foot, right? And when you see these officers, you'd be a little bit more fearful, right? And I do admit, TSG, it is mostly that, but in the police force these days, it is mostly women, and it's incredibly dangerous. And as we're seeing there, that was from 2019, and the off-duty male police officer headbutting the migrant who was threatening to go around stabbing people. I think that's absolutely fantastic, because he didn't have to do it. He's not covered by insurance when he's off duty, but he did it anyway because he cares about his job. He cares about protecting the people of this country. And so a big round of applause for him. He's an actual man. He's a real man. And the kind of stuff, funny enough, is actually kind of stuff Tommy would do as well, because when he there were videos of him, and this is back years ago, I think around 2019, and there was a video of there was 2 like migrants, and they spat in a woman's eye. It was like this elderly woman's eye, and Tommy, he went out and started recording them, and then he started threatening them. They started threatening Tommy, right? So he jumped back in his car where his kids were, and then was like, "No, fuck this," and got out and started a fight with them. And there was like, this is the kind of man he is, and this is how men should be. This is how men should be, right? When we see something like this, we should stand up and actually fight against it, because that's our job in society, is to protect the women and the children.
100%.
And so,
yeah,
I'm sorry.
No, I agree. It actually leads us on to the next one on grooming gangs, and this is a issue of how we have failed to protect those most vulnerable. And this is from GB News. Rotherham grooming gang members jailed for over 18 years after raping extremely vulnerable girls. This was on Monday, this story. 2 grooming gang members in Rotherham, which is the epicenter, have been handed a pair of decade-long sentences for raping girls who are vulnerable in the extreme. Ivorian national Romuald Stefan Hupuet and Zimbabwean Abosolom Zigui.
Very English name.
Yes, very, very English. Not Fred and Bob, certainly not. But this, and the story, and maybe even GB News would have talked about how good this was. But to me, if you are involved in raping children, rape anyway, and we don't prosecute, we have something like 98% of failure to prosecute. 10 years means they'll get out after 5 years of good behavior. I don't think 5 years is long enough for criminals like this. But it is our soft justice system, I think we see time and time again, James.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, it wasn't just rape. So if you read further down the article, it was actually gang rape. These two men would take it to took these two girls to a flat in Rotherham where they were gang raped by a large amount of men. Yeah, that's what happened. And I find it interesting that GB News doesn't mention that in the title, considering most people only read the title; they don't actually
Yep.
read the article. But the thing is, so it was the early 2000s was when Sammy Woodhouse and a bunch of the survivors, they finally pressed charges against Arshad Hussein and a bunch of the other Rothschilds,
Hmm.
Rotherham rapists. Yeah, but this happened in 2011 to 2012.
Yep.
And they were still, and these girls were still taken to a flat where they were gang raped by a bunch of Asian. Well, I don't want to say Asian men, Pakistani men, because it's mostly Pakistanis. Yeah.
Pakistani Muslim men. That's what the 90%, over 90% are, according to Peter McLaughlin and Easy Meat. I think he put 92% on it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly it. So the fact that this is still going on, it's not just that these two men, they were pedophiles. It was that there was a gang of Muslim men who decided that they wanted to go along and destroy a child in order to wage war on the West, because that's what they do, isn't it? They also described the girls as fresh meat.
Hmm.
So, they think the girls are kafar, which is part of the Islamic faith.
Yep.
So that's what happened there. And this stuff is, I hate, because I went down to, where was it? Rochdale recently in Oldham.
Yep.
And I filmed a documentary, hasn't gone out yet. We found out something about the ringleader that we're going to be releasing very soon. And we went down and I did a little tour with Billy Howard from Parents Against Grooming, walking around the area. And I did one with John Lawrence around Oldham.
Yeah.
And, I heard that Andy Burnham, who's the mayor of Manchester, actually claimed that this is historic. It's not historic.
No.
Yeah, we found, so in Rochdale, there are multiple girls who are saying that this is still happening.
Yeah.
Still happening.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it is still going on to such a large extent, but they're covering it up. But Andy Burnham also said that there's no evidence of a cover-up. There's no evidence of a cover-up. The reason he said there's no evidence of a cover-up is because he never investigated to find if there was one.
And Andy Burnham, Greater Manchester Police, put in special measures for failing everyone, not just rape victims, but everyone.
Yeah. Manchester's one of the. North England is just a lost. It's just lost as a whole, isn't it? It's probably the worst place for grooming. It's the worst place for population replacement. Where
Yep.
if you go to Bradford, white people are a minority. We're only in the 40% up there. So funny enough, that's where crime begins to rise. Is where white people become a minority. Interesting, that, isn't it? And the culture has completely changed drastically. So it's sad, and I've always thought that with regards to sentencing for groomers, it should be the age of the girl doubled.
Yeah.
Right? At minimum. So 2 15-year-old girls, that's 30 years. So 60 years, but they only serve 30 before they can even look at probation. But then again, I don't necessarily agree with probation for pedophiles. So, I think 18 years, while people are celebrating it, it's still a lenient sentence, right? If we look at Scotland, now, people like Narinder Kaur and all of them love to jump on the bandwagon here and say, why aren't the right wing talking about this, right? Why aren't we talking about the white rape gang in Scotland? Well, for a start, it's a white country, so white people are going to commit crimes at a higher rate than black people or Muslims. But also, sorry, let me just. But also, they were actually punished.
Mm.
They were given, I think what they were given like 25 years and stuff like that. One of them was given 8 years, but they were given lifelong restriction orders. So a lifelong restriction order is if the judge decides they can, If a judge decides they can hold them indefinitely in a prison cell. So that's where I see the difference, right? It's the lenient sentences. And then, obviously you get the bill that's just been passed that now makes it so minorities get more lenient sentences than white people.
Yeah, but the Labour Justice Minister had no idea, even though she was supposedly involved in those meetings, as was David Lammy. So lies.
Yeah, I like with David Lammy. I like what Lee Anderson said about that, which is if you took every village idiot from every village across the UK, if you took every village idiot from every village and put them all together, David Lammy would still be the village idiot.
That's
My favourite.
so good. Lee Anderson's bang on.
Yeah.
Let's jump on. Let's see if we can just do actually 3 or 4 minutes on each of these. This kind of fits in to that story, and I think it fits into the failure of our legal system again. An Afghan asylum seeker found guilty of raping girl 15 behind a pub in Scotland, and it emerged in court he's likely to be deported from the UK. Now we have. Hearts of Oak, we did a letter prior to judicial review back in 2020 on the Rochdale Nine. 3 of them had dual nationality, and the government spent over $1 million fighting their own battle to deport them. Completely schizophrenic. But yeah, we are not deporting these people, and I don't even know whether they should actually be put in jail. I think they should just be deported immediately, because why should we have to pay for them to be in jail whenever they should go back to their own country?
Yeah, so I mean, you mentioned the Rochdale Nine there. There's actually 54 currently on bail in Rochdale for their involvement in the rape gang scandal. 54 is a very high amount. Now, 3 of the Rochdale Nine were meant to be deported. That includes the ringleader Shabir Ahmed, who he got. By the way, just to tell you how bad Shabir Ahmed was, the girls called him Daddy.
Yeah.
That's what he told them to call him, right? So that's how bad they were, right? Now, there were 3 attempts. Now, this is just a ringleader. There were 3 attempts to make. There were 3 attempts made to deport Shabir Ahmed. There was one in 2016, one in 2019. No, 2 attempts, sorry. And in 2016, they said he blamed the white people trying to scapegoat Muslims.
Yeah.
That's what he said. So obviously showed no remorse whatsoever. It didn't happen. Yeah, he wasn't deported. 2019, another attempt was made. He wasn't deported. He's now being released next year.
And all that under a so-called conservative government.
Yeah.
I just want to point that out.
Yeah, so that's happening next year. He's been released, right? Now they're making a big deal about this. Is that Shabir Ahmed will be allowed to? He's being banned from quite a bit of Rochdale and Oldham. The only reason he's being banned is because you know about him. All the other ones that you don't know about, they haven't been banned from anywhere in Rochdale. And in fact, we spoke to a young girl. Unfortunately, I'm sure you know, Peter, what it's like with survivors. They pulled out at the last minute for doing an interview, which is fine. We understand what they've been through. But she actually bumped into, I think it was Muhammad Imran Ali on the streets of Rochdale. This is a man who terrorized and raped her for 20 plus years. No, not 20 plus years, sorry, about 5 or 10 years. So it's disgusting. And these girls are being forced to confront the reality, because a lot of these girls, they come from poor backgrounds.
Yep.
That's why they're targeted out. They can't afford to move.
Yep.
And they're being terrorized on and these guys that spent countless years raping all these children, they're being allowed to walk the same streets to terrorize their victims and bumping into many of them. So I don't, and a lot of this happened under a conservative government. A lot of it happened under a Labour government. They're one in the same. And it's disgusting. We have seriously let our children down.
They have, but actually, the concern. Let me bring this story up. The concern of the government is this: that owning images, and I thought, no, this cannot be true. It must be a spoof. But no, owning pictures of Muslim women without their hijab should be a criminal offence. Labour MPs proposed, and I think that was the Commons Women and Equalities Committee have said this actually, and they thought such photographs should be treated the same as child sex abuse images. So having a Muslim woman without her hijab, a picture is as bad as child porn pictures. And you kind of think, where have we gone as society where that is, where Muslims, whatever happens, are protected, and then white English girls actually are just completely rejected and everything is against them.
Yeah, it seems we've entered this stage of blasphemy, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you saw recently there was Martin Frost in Manchester, and he was arrested for burning the Quran, right? Have you seen this?
Yep.
Yeah, so he was arrested for burning the Quran, right? Now, I'm good mates with him. I spoke to him after he was arrested, and he said from the moment he was arrested until the moment he was released, the only people dealing with him were Muslims. Now, the two people who arrested him, again, they were Muslims. Yeah. And if you saw from the, so there's a video of him being arrested, and he was slammed into a wall by the police. Yeah. They had no reason to slam him into a wall, but they did it. Why? Because they're Muslims. He just burnt the Quran. So what we've got currently in the UK, and this is how far we've fallen, is that we've currently got Muslims arresting British people for criticizing Islam.
Yeah.
That's what's going on in the UK right now. And he is looking at some serious prison time for this, right? And not only that, he messaged me the other day and said, James, how come, right? All these illegals are getting put up in these 3-star hotels, they're getting money every week, they're getting food, and yet I've got 14 quid to last me for the next 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Right? He has no place to go, no place to live. We've one of our mutual friends has fortunately hooked him up with a place to go for the time being. But you know, he's basically homeless, and the fact they've doxed him as well, man, it's really concerning. Yeah, it's
no,
it's
I saw
concerning, man.
it really is. And whenever the man who threatened to kill him or whatever was released on bail, but he who actually burned the Quran was held, and that's the worst offense. It's not threatening to murder; it's actually offending Islam. That's the bigger offense that we have.
So that was a different incident. That was one outside the Turkish embassy.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, so interesting though, isn't it? I mean, the guy who used a knife to stab someone, gets released on bail, and then the guy who only burns a book, you know, as a symbolic gesture, he's the one who was held. It's disgusting, man. It really is. It's disgusting. Yeah,
it's a perfect. And while that happens, Islam is being promoted. Here is so obviously Keir Starmer, sadly our Prime Minister, holding some Ramadan events in Westminster Central Hall. And here's another picture of Windsor.
Allahu Akbar, Allah.
Sorry for subjecting you to those beautiful tones, musical melody. But yeah, Windsor Castle. And you realise, as you commented, we've fallen without a shopping fires.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, look at the royal family, right? So the royal family, they put out a post for Ramadan. They wished Muslims everywhere a happy Ramadan, and then they went and packaged dates for them to break their fast. Right now, all Muslims are pretty much doing is skipping lunch. So I would say Christianity, Lent is a lot more superior and hard, because we actually give it something that we love, and we don't just skip dinner.
Ramadan, I think, is less of a fast than a feast, because they stuff themselves whenever the sun goes down. So to me, it's just an opportunity to stuff yourself as opposed to restraining yourself.
Exactly, it is. I mean, so the royal family, they put out a post for Ramadan. They packaged dates for the Muslim community. Did they put out a post for Lent or Ash Wednesday? No, they didn't put out a single post. In fact, the last time that the royal family mentioned Ash Wednesday was in 2022, and the last time that they mentioned Lent was in 2010.
Wow.
So you see what's going on here, right? Is that they're appeasing the Muslim community, who only represent about 5% of the population. What's going to happen when it gets to 30, right? Over their own people, right? I mean, what was it? The UK was founded on Christian values.
Yep.
I know that we are a secularist country, but we're meant to have a law based in Christianity where, but then again, I don't think secularism is compatible with Islam. And I think I spoke to you about this at one of the London demos, is that secularism doesn't work when when Islam is here, because of Islamic supremacy. And so, we've got to kind of take Islam out of the equation when it comes to secularism. But I don't think that we should be a secularist country. I think we should be a Christian nation.
Yeah, well, all those hand in hand with all the LGBT, hand in hand with Muslim Sadiq Khan, all that, they'll be the first ones to be thrown off a tall building whenever we become an Islamic state, which is about 2050, 2055, I think, looking at the numbers. if we do nothing about it. So maybe it's time to stop just shrugging our shoulders and actually engaging and doing something. Um, I wanted something a little bit different. Three other stories. Something quite different is reform and what's been happening there. With Rupert Lowe seems to have got himself in some hot water. Let me bring up the actually. First, let me bring up the story that the Mail have run in, and I think we have all got huge respect for Rupert and the common sense that he is speaking. And here's the Daily Mail article, and this was from a piece that Rupert had done. Reform UK descends into civil war as Nigel Farage berates rival Rupert Lowe for questioning his leadership and accusing him of acting like a messiah. Well, Nigel does think he's the messiah. Um, he insists reform is not just a protest party making gigantic strides. And some of these criticisms are the criticisms that Howard Cox or Ben Habib have had with reform that is around a single figure who refuses to even recognize the punishment that Tommy Robinson is being put under, and you've got that split. But no, what are your thoughts? Rupert Lowe, his speeches have been so good. He understands the issues, and he's willing to engage on them, and certainly even talking about Tommy and his treatment, where Nigel's afraid. Rupert doesn't seem to have that fear.
So prior to this, I didn't really like Rupert Lowe that much, and I know people get shocked when I say that. They're like, "Oh, you don't like Rupert Lowe?" Well, no, because I've had past. I've dealt with him in the past, right? So prior to this, we've been organising a campaign in Norwich at the University of East Anglia, and at this campaign, we've been fighting against men in female changing rooms, right? And I remember going to a reform meeting where Nigel Farage was and Rupert Lowe, and I asked Rupert Lowe a question on the microphone. I asked him, what they're going to do to combat female-only spaces, right? Now, after this meeting, he messaged me on Facebook. And so then we started talking. Now, he said, "James, I want to support you. I love what you do with Students Against Tyranny, blah, blah, blah. I'll help you if I get elected." Yeah. Now, when he... so what we did is... So he also... And then he started asking for my help. So what we did is we brought a massive group of people up to Great Yarmouth. We helped him on election day. We helped him on the day before election day. And we helped him on the week prior, right? And what we did is we went door to door. Right? We went door to door, leafleting, asking people if they voted yet, doing all this. Now, when he got elected, he then stopped responding, never messaged me back. So I feel like I got taken for a ride a little bit there, where he used my help, but then didn't offer any. But then all the things he offered in return never actually came to fruition. But I'm going to put that petty stuff aside on that, and I think what he's doing here is absolutely fantastic. Because, I wouldn't be like. The fact he's willing to call out the leader of his political party is just, to me, it shows tremendous courage. And what it does tell me is that in the future, if reform become a majority in Parliament, he will actually fight for his constituents and he will fight for the people of Britain. And to me, that is massive. That's what, that's more than what you could ask for. Yeah. With Farage, you don't see that. You don't see him having a backbone. He's a coward. And he is a coward.
I agree. Let me play just two of the little clips around it. Nigel Farage being on some program, and then Isabel Oakeshott, obviously Richard Tice's fiance or girlfriend, who was former leader, one of their MPs. So let me just play just two little clips from these.
But there's a lot of text coming in today about your old mate and colleague, Rupert Lowe. Now, he, I'm sure you've read it, popped up in a rival newspaper, we're not going to mention, that wasn't The Sun this morning, and he said it's too early to know whether Nigel will deliver the goods. He can do, but he's a fiercely independent individual, and it's been good so far, but he has messianic qualities. But will these distill into leadership? I don't know. We have to change from being a protest party led by the Messiah, which I think is you, but you are a very naughty boy, to being properly structured party with a front bench, which we don't have. We need to start behaving as if we are leading and not merely protesting. That is a shot across your bows, isn't it?
Party.
That's a shot across your bows there, isn't it?
We are not a protest party in any way at all. That is utterly wrong. Utterly, completely wrong. We are an entirely positive party. Come to any reform event, and the positivity, the energy.
I just want to play another little clip, which was Isabel Oakeshott, and to me it was pathetic. Her tone and language. Here she is.
Really sweet, isn't it? Poor little Rupert. He's quite new at politics. He's really new in the House of Commons. And, this is what happens to people who are amateurs at politics, and they become MPs and suddenly they think, yay, look at me. I think I could be Prime Minister. They all do it. Bless him.
And she was, that tone was despicable, really was.
So Isabel, right?
Go for it.
I mean, he's amassed, 200,000 followers in the past 6 months. Yeah. No, he knows what he's doing. He's actually got, anytime I bring up reform, there was like, oh, I love Rupert Lowe, right? They don't say, oh, I love Nigel Farage. Nigel Farage may have been in this game a long time, sweetheart, but he hasn't actually done anything, has he? Yeah. He marched his men to the top of the hill in the Brexit days and then abandoned them there. And that's the best thing that's the only thing he's good at, is he gets all this buzz about, and then he takes everyone to the top, leaves them there to do the rest of the work, right? He's not good at politics. The only thing he's good at is creating a little buzz about himself. And, how many times has he tried to get elected now? What, 8? Rupert Lowe has stood twice and he's in on the second time, right? I think Rupert Lowe is a better authority on politics than you or him. So I think it's ridiculous, isn't it? And that tone there is absolutely despicable. This is a man now who is actually, he's making reform more loved. Yep. And if Rupert Lowe leaves, reform, if Rupert Lowe leaves, reform dies with it. That's what happened. That's what will happen. Yeah. So, say what you want about Rupert Lowe being new to politics, he is, right? But he knows what he's doing, and he's doing a fantastic job at it.
He is. I agree. I have no love for Isabel Oakeshott either, so we're on the same page there. Let me bring up just last story, just touching on Ukraine, and I'll just play out a video that you put up about demographic changes happening in America. Here is one of the many parts of the story with Ukraine. Elon Musk says Ukraine should hold elections as parliament back Zelensky until war ends. He called, shortly after the lawmakers passed a resolution affirming Zelensky is present until after the war with Russia. And you've got this feud escalating between Zelensky and Trump. You've also got an issue with the UK, the US cutting off intelligence gathering. What are your thoughts on this? Because it seems common sense to hold elections, and this seems to be a divide. And President Trump seems to be saying to Europe, "You fix this problem. It's not our problem anymore."
You're right, there is a big divide, and there's a big divide on the right on this as well. I've noticed people like Julia Hartley, I think, came out in support of Zelensky.
Oh, she's awful. Yes.
So I'm shocked by that. Turning Point then came forward in support of Zelensky, they came forward in support of Ukraine. Yeah. I do know that that some of their founders actually do travel to Ukraine quite frequently, so it makes sense. But they also said something which I massively agree with, is that while I support Ukraine, and I don't support Ukraine, I don't support Russia, I don't support either of them. He said, while I support Ukraine, I think this is not our war and we should put the British people first, right? Yeah. That's what he said. And I massively agree with that sentiment. I don't know why there was massive backlash, and everyone, you saw all of these EU type figures, all these massive politicians, all these celebrities coming forward and supporting Zelensky and saying they stand with Ukraine. Right. And I thought it was really weird because a lot of the messages were very similar, or in some instances were exactly the same. What the elites are arguing for right now is a world war. When all else fails, they send you to war. The way I look at it at the moment is that we've got a massive invasion on our shores. We've got terror attacks every day. We've got stabbings. We've got rapes. We've got grooming. And yet they want to send off all the men to fight for a different country, to die in a foreign land, so that, in my opinion, the migrants can do whatever they want with our women and children. Maybe that's what's going on. So that, again, we could be invaded without a shot ever being fired. Yeah. I'm surprised because Trump, all they did was they tried to call for peace. Yeah, they tried to get a peace agreement signed. And if anyone's actually watched the 40-minute video, because a lot of people actually haven't, they've only just seen a few clips here and there. In the full 40-minute video, Zelensky calls Vance a bitch under his breath in Ukrainian. He rolls his eyes at everything they say. Yeah, he tries reneging on the he tries like renegotiating the terms of the peace deal in front of all these cameras. He's extremely disrespectful, and he didn't wear a suit.
As Trump said, "Oh, you're dressed up today." It's okay.
He was in Trump and Vance rightfully called him out on his disrespectful behavior. Yeah, and he can come back when he grows up. But obviously, we don't have a strong leader like America does. And so our leader, Keir Starmer, has decided to cower over and give as much money and as many weapons to Zelensky as possible. And the £2 billion, I know it came from the frozen Russian assets, but the £2 billion that we gave them, Zelensky has admitted that they're going to be used to fund weapons. So essentially, we're paying for people to die, and that is something I cannot agree with. I mean, if we look at World War II, right, with the Nazis, Henry Ford collaborated with both sides in that war, and a lot of the elites, if you look, you can find numerous examples of it. Many elites collaborate with both sides during the war because there's no profit in peace, and they've realised this. And so what they're trying to do now is they are trying to coerce a world war as a method of generating income for them.
Yep.
Also, sow and divide, sow and division. Because you divide and conquer, and also what was the other one? There's another point as well. It's also about a form of control.
It is,
and that's what I see happening right now. So I'm, quite upset with our leaders, but what's to expect from the Labour Party, who used to be anti-war? So I'm very confused. And it's interesting to watch all the people who called for a ceasefire in regards to Israel-Palestine are now arguing for. This is interesting, isn't it? Israel can actually win that war. Oh, let's call for a ceasefire, right? Ukraine, they can't win that war. Yeah, let's send all our weapons to. Yeah. It's hypocritical. But what more can you expect from the cognitive dissonance that is the left?
No, I agree. James, always good having you on. Thanks so much for giving us your thoughts on all of those stories. Always too much to cover, but thank you so much. Let me just play at this little clip which you'd put up showing, let me see, it's Liddy in Ohio, Springfield, Ohio, talking about how her area has just been completely changed and decimated. So we'll just play this. And if we can, and then say goodbye. Here it is.
The top floor, the classes would literally be filled with Haitians. Every single classroom. No white people, no nothing. It was just Haitians.
What percentage of students at your high school would you say are migrants that have recently came into the United States?
I would say about I don't even know, 50% of the schools, or maybe a little bit more, are Haitians. They're filling the classrooms up, and we don't have the translators to help the teachers, and they're just really disrespectful. I mean, the footage got taken down, but before Christmas break, there's two Haitians got caught in the stairway.
At school?
Yes, at school. There was video. Another thing, the age limit to go to school is 21.
Yeah.
And there'd be 21-year-olds in freshman classes.
Oh.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
Yeah, that's not okay. That's not okay because I'm not saying all of them, but some of my friends have literally got violated by them and harassed.
So their 21-year-olds are inside the high schools?
Yes.